in cause and effect right, there's really two questions we're trying to answer. We're asking the question why, and trying to really focus on answering that question of why an event or situation occurred. Or we are answering the question what happens if, and we're sort of exploring what the possible consequences of a certain event or situation may be. Into the purpose, I might write a cause and effect essay. Really, there would be two purposes. Either you want to really focus on the causes of an event, really explore what occurred that led up to an event or situation, or we're trying to really focus on what happened as a direct or indirect result of a situation or event or the effects. So let's say we have an event of a car breaking down on the side of the road. Well, in a cause and effect essay, where our purpose is really to focus on the causes, we're going to spend most of the time in the essay talking about perhaps the neglect that led up to the car breaking down. So perhaps this one in the picture, didn't fill up her tank with gas, or filled it up with the wrong kind of gas. Maybe she hasn't had her oil changed in like 20,000 miles or something, and she really hasn't been bringing it in to have things checked at all, and maybe the Freon wasn't checked, and so that's part of the reason why it overheated. And so on and so forth. And so if that's our purpose, then really we're going to spend most of our essay talking about the causes of this car breaking down. Now, if our purpose is really to explore the possible effects of a car breaking down, then we're going to talk about what could happen as a result of the car breaking down at the side of the road. So let's say this woman was on her way to a job interview when the car broke down. So that's a possible effect, is that maybe she missed her interview, and so therefore she would never got the job that she was hoping to get. Now, because of neglect, she's not able to drive this current car, nor does she have the money to fix the car or purchase a new car, and so she ends up in kind of a worse situation than she was to begin with. And we would really focus our essay on those effects, if that's kind of our purpose or goal. So really, in a cause and effect essay, you can have two organizations. The first organization would be focusing on effects. And if we're going to focus on effects, we're going to spend most of the paper talking about effects, and the effects is going to be kind of the last thing that we talk about. So really, in organization one, we're going to touch on the event, touch on the causes, and then spend most of the paper talking about effects. Or we're going to talk about the causes, touch on the causes, touch on the actual event itself, and then spend most of the paper talking about the effects. Either way, we end up spending most of the paper talking about effects. Focus on those effects of that certain event, and the majority of the paper is going to be really answering the question, what happens if? So for example, if we have an event of the tuition of a college going up suddenly, we might introduce the paper with that event about tuition going up. We'd spend just a little while kind of going into the causes a bit of why that tuition went up, and perhaps it had to do with the rise of prices in paper and books and computers and pens and other school materials. But the majority of the essay is really going to focus on the possible effects of this recent rise in tuition. So possibly as a result of the rise in tuition, maybe there's going to be a higher student dropout rate and lower admission numbers because fewer students can really afford to attend the school. Maybe students are going to actually start performing worse academically because more of them are stressed out from having to work longer hours in order to afford the tuition. And so maybe this is going to result in lower rankings for the college as a result, due to the lower performance of the students, and teachers having to do more teaching with less material. So our thesis statement is going to end up looking something like, although the recent rise in tuition tuition may be linked to the rising costs of materials. This increase severely and detrimentally affects the student population and in turn the college's performance overall. So our thesis statement kind of touches on the event itself, the possible causes, but then really focuses on those effects that we're going to spend most of our paper talking about. So organization 2 is an organization in which we are focused on causes. So again, we can either talk about the event, touch on the effects, and then kind of really get into our causes and spend most of our time on our causes. Or we can talk about the effects, and then the event, and then the causes. But either way, we're going to spend most of the paper on causes, and we want to end with causes. And really, when we are doing this kind of paper, we're spending most of the paper answering the question why. Why did a certain event occur or situation happen? So here's an example, kind of using the same scenario of effects being talked about real briefly first, and then the event, and then the causes. So the effect has been that college has suddenly become a low-performing institution, and basically what that means is kind of outlined at the very beginning of the essay. Student scores going down, and teachers being less satisfied teaching there, and what have you. And then it kind of ties it to the event of a recent hike in the tuition that's happened. And then the majority of the paper is going to really deal with the major causes for this rise in tuition. And maybe it's going to note the accelerating prices for materials and technology in the classroom and outside the classroom. Online courses are often very expensive for schools, so maybe that was an added expense that was recent for that college. There was an expensive nursing program that was added to this college, and so there's lab supplies and all kinds of fees and that are associated with that that have driven this rise for tuition.